Good interviewing skills are essential for an ombudsman to be effective. Careful listening is an integral part of interviewing residents, helping to identify problems, both those stated directly and indirectly, and to gather information to investigate those problems. In Situation 1, our ombudsman, Mary, at first lacks the skills needed to help Mrs. Woods.
Mrs. Woods?
Yes?
My name is Mary Keller from the Ombudsman Program. May I come in?
Well, yes, okay.
Thank you. I'm an ombudsman visiting with residents in the nursing home today to see if there's anything I can do, if there are any problems or questions I can help with. I work with residents, kind of a resident representative. Do you have a few minutes to talk?
A few minutes? Well, yes. Come and sit down.
Thank you.
Do you work for the nursing home?
No, not for the nursing home. I'm here from the community.
Oh, I see. Not many folks from the community come by. I don't get many visitors at all. Just the people that work here. Oh, besides the ones from the church. They do the Bible group in the day room on Tuesdays, you see.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. Well, at least we can talk here in peace without that television over there on all the time. If you'd come earlier, I don't know where we'd have gone. Someone came and took her out. Her niece it was. Oh, a nice young lady with long black hair. But most times I can't hear myself think. It's on so loud. Early in the morning, too. She turns it up all the way. It's a good thing I don't have many visitors anymore. Oh, we used to entertain all the time. Not formal, but lots of friends who would drop by day in and day out. Most of them are gone now. Bless their souls. Oh, but we'd sit and talk, play cards for hours on end. I always had something to offer them, too. Nothing fancy, just some cakes or cookies, but always a fresh pot of hot coffee. That's the way I was raised, you know. You can't just let your guests sit around empty-handed, my mother used to say. Oh, and it smelled so good. I sure'd like to have a cup right now. Oh, and you too, poor dear. You must think me so rude. I can't even offer you a cup of coffee.
Oh, I'm fine, really, Mrs. Woods. Are there any problems in particular that you're having that I might be able to help with?
Well, I don't like to complain. They're pretty good here. They look after me. We get 3 meals a day. But I don't get around like I used to. Though at my age, I guess I can't ask for much more.
Well, okay then. I'll be by again and stop to see how you're doing, okay? Mm-hmm. It was nice meeting you, Mrs. Woods.
Did Mary miss something? Let's see how she might have continued the conversation.
Oh, and it smelled so good. I sure would like to have a cup right now. Oh, and you too, poor dear. You must think me so rude. I can't even offer you a cup of coffee.
I don't think you're rude, Mrs. Woods. You're a very gracious hostess. But you say you would like some coffee now, but can't get any. Why is that?
Well, 10 o'clock in the morning is the only coffee break we get here, beside those cold cups they call coffee at breakfast and lunch. Oh, ugh. Not fresh and hot and fresh brewed the way I used to make it. Well, you'd never come to my house and get a cold cup of coffee.
I'm sure I wouldn't, Mrs. Woods. I'm enjoying this chance to get to know a little bit about you and your life here. Now, let's see. You mentioned several things.
Not many folks from the community come by. I don't get many visitors at all.
You'd like visitors from the community.
If you'd come earlier, I don't know where we could have gone. Most times I can't hear myself think, it's on so loud.
Your roommate's TV is too loud, and there's no quiet place to entertain visitors.
10 in the morning is the only coffee break we get here, beside those cold cups of what they call coffee that we get at breakfast and lunch.
You'd like coffee more often than breakfast, lunch, and 10 a.m., and the coffee served at meal times is cold.
You must think me so rude. I can't even offer you a cup of coffee.
And you'd like coffee available to serve to visitors. Is that right?
Oh, dear me. Did I really complain that much? Oh, I'm so sorry to bother you with these petty details.
Oh, there's no need to apologize, Mrs. Woods. Those are important aspects of your everyday life. And after all, this is your home now, and you have every right to ask for some improvements.
Well, I suppose so.
That's why I'm here, to see if I can help in any way. Now, of the concerns that you mentioned, which is the most important to you?
The coffee, I guess. Yes, the coffee. There's no sense in inviting people to come and see you if you can't serve them a hot cup of coffee, is there? The kitchen help, though. They say they can't be making coffee 24 hours a day.
Oh, you've mentioned this to someone about the coffee?
Yeah, they don't seem to do anything about it.
Would you like me to see what I can do?
Well, certainly. If you don't mind being bothered. If you can get it, yes.
Well, it's no bother at all. I'll talk to some of the other residents to see if they have the same problem, and to the Residence Council president to see if they've been involved, and then to the food services supervisor. Do you mind if I mention your name?
Well, I don't know. If they think I'm a complainer, they might ask me to move. And I have no other place.
Mrs. Woods, I want you to know that they can't ask you to move for complaining. Residents have the right to discuss problems in the facility without fear. What if I interviewed some other residents and talked to the food services supervisor without mentioning your name? How would that be?
Oh, without my name, you say? Well, that would do it first. And then if the others feel the same way about the coffee, well, we'll see.
Fine. Then I'll get to work and be back to let you know what I've learned. Then see what you want me to do next, okay?
Oh, all right. Thank you, dear. Well, you'll be back then?
Yes, Mrs. Woods, in about a week.
Skilled observation involves all the senses. It is important to pay attention to what you see, what you hear, what you smell, and even what you touch. As our Ombudsman Mary leaves the facility, what should she observe?
Hi, Mr. Jones. It's time for your discussion group. Would you like me to go down with you today?
Mandatory in-service training starts in 5 minutes in the break room.
Oh, okay, you talk
What
over.
are we doing tonight?
Well, down in the dining room and talk about their program.
Oh,
Well, we have to see about vertexes and diagonals for momentum. And those are how many lines you can draw from one point.
Hurry up now. I have to get down to Mrs. Wilson's room.
You're doing so much better today.
thank God, I'm feeling much better.
Housekeeping to room 106. Housekeeping to room 106.
She's ready to see us because we've come all this way now.
In this situation, our ombudsman, Mary, is reporting the results of her investigation to Mrs. Woods and encouraging Mrs. Woods' involvement in the next steps of the problem-solving process.
Mrs. Woods, I'm Mary from the Ombudsman Program. I'm here to talk with you about the coffee issue we discussed.
Oh, yes, dear. Do come in. I've been expecting you. What's happening with the coffee?
Well, I've been quite busy since we spoke, talking to other residents here. It seems quite a few have the same concerns you do, that the coffee is cold, that they'd like to have some at other times during the day. And you might like to know that several other residents have mentioned this to the food staff, but didn't get any better response than you did. So you're not alone.
Yes, yes.
And I also talked to the food services supervisor. It seems the employees always have a pot available until late afternoon. So does the administrator. She assumed that no one wanted coffee during the day, since her staff reports that the residents don't finish the coffee in their cups at meal times.
Well, of course not. Who wants cold coffee with their meals?
I also observed the coffee being served in the dining room even before the residents get to their seats. Now, it seems there should be some simple solutions to these problems if we can get people together to meet on this. Are you willing to give it a try?
Well, a meeting? I don't want to be a troublemaker. Who would be there, did you say?
Perhaps Mr. Bernstein, the president of the Residents' Council, since they've heard this problem before, and Mrs. Flores, the food services supervisor, and me too, I'd be there.
Well, if you will be there, I suppose it'll be all right. But will we get some hot coffee and some to serve our guests?
Well, I can't promise anything for sure, Mrs. Woods, but we might get some improvements. I'll let you know when the meeting will be, okay?
Oh, well, yes, dear. Well, all right. I'll be here.
It is important to have a planning meeting with residents to prepare for resolving problems with staff. Everyone needs to understand clearly what the residents want to accomplish by meeting with staff. In this situation, Mary, the ombudsman, arranged a meeting with the food services supervisor. Before the supervisor arrives, Mary reviews with Mrs. Woods and Mr. Bernstein, president of the Residents' Council, the residents' objectives and the role each will have. Specific plans for resolving the problem will be developed in the meeting with staff.
I thought the three of us could get our thoughts together before Mrs. Flores gets here.
That sounds good to me. Anything to help us get some hot coffee.
Now let's make sure we all agree on what you want from this meeting. I've heard two main concerns. First, you want the coffee to be hot when it's served to residents. And second, you'd like coffee more often than breakfast, lunch, and the mid-morning coffee break. Is that it?
Yes.
Yes.
Maybe if we could just get that much, we could get some coffee to serve our visitors.
Oh, yes, Mrs. Woods, we can try for that. Mr. Bernstein, since you're president of the council, could you take the lead on this? Would you present the request to Mrs. Flores? I think it would make a stronger statement if the request came from you.
Well, yes, if you want me to. We do get a lot of complaints on this from people.
Oh, that's right, Ira. I don't want Mrs. Flores to think I'm the only one on this.
Sounds like we agree then. So now what we have to... Oh, hello, Mrs. Flores. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, Mrs. Woods, Mr. Bernstein.
I thought we could get together to discuss a couple of issues regarding the coffee. I've met with a number of the residents, including Mr. Bernstein, about the council's experience, and there seem to be some common concerns. Mr. Bernstein and Mrs. Woods would like to discuss them with you.
Okay. What is it about the coffee?
Well, two things, really. The coffee is cold when we get it. the coffee is always cold. And the 10 o'clock coffee break and breakfast and lunch are the only times we get coffee. And that doesn't suit everybody. Some would like to have it at other times, like later in the morning or in the afternoon.
Our coffee makers were working last time I looked. They were making hot coffee, but I'll check them out.
That'd be fine, Mrs. Flores. We appreciate your being willing to work with us. If I may share an observation I made, I noticed that the coffee is poured before all of the residents are in the dining room. Many, in fact, aren't in their seats for up to 15 minutes after it's been poured.
Oh, well, it would be cold then, wouldn't it? At least I don't have to worry about new coffee makers. You want the staff to wait to pour the coffee until after people are seated then?
Yes.
Well, that would be a big improvement.
Maybe even a warm-up during the meal?
If we can, I'll see. What else was it? Coffee breaks. We can't be making coffee all day long, you know. What with cooking, washing, everything else we have to do, special diets and all, I don't know. That's something we just have to look at.
Mrs. Flores, we do realize what an enormous job you have in food services. Very important to everyone, of course. Can we take a moment to think about possible solutions, short of expecting food services to operate like a 24-hour coffee shop? There might be something that could be worked out.
Well, we can't please everyone.
Could there be more than one designated coffee break a day if the staff didn't have to serve everyone, so that coffee could be available for those who want it? Perhaps in the dining room for those who could get there themselves.
We might be able to try it if we don't have to serve everyone all the time. But all day, that's a lot of cups, coffee, and with someone watching the area and all.
The council could help. What if we asked people, took a survey, when do you want to have coffee? Then we could choose a couple of times between meals, let people know it's there. They could serve themselves, or some of them. We're not asking staff to pour every cup of coffee.
If the residents themselves decide when they want it, we could probably handle one more coffee break a day, besides the 10 o'clock.
Good. Then you're willing to have 2 coffee times a day?
I'll have to check with the administrator, of course.
That would be fine. So, now let's see where we are. Mrs. Flores is going to see if the staff can wait to pour the coffee until residents are seated and ready. Is that right?
That I can check on now with this shift. And I can let the morning shift know, too.
And for those who eat in their rooms, what about their coffee? They say it's cold, too.
Now, that's not really my area. Those trays are set up by the nursing staff. We do not have enough food staff to make a round just to pour coffee.
What if they had coffee right on the carts in a jug, like a thermos?
Yes, a carafe with a lid to keep it hot.
That's it, a carafe. Then they could pour it right on the spot when they serve the trays.
Well, I'll have to talk to the nursing director about that one.
We'd appreciate that, Mrs. Flores. And Mr. Bernstein, you're going to arrange for council to conduct a survey to see at what times people would prefer to have coffee, then choose 2 popular times and get together with Mrs. Flores to set that up. And then if coffee's available at those times, Mrs. Woods, you could have some available to serve your visitors. Would you like to add anything else?
This is fine. I can help Ira, though, with the survey.
Thank you, Mrs. Flores, for meeting with us. I'll be checking back to see how things are going.
Sometimes ombudsmen use negotiation or mediation skills to resolve problems between residents. In this situation, our ombudsman, Mary, has stopped by to check with Mrs. Woods about the resolution of a complaint. However, her roommate's TV is too loud for the 2 of them to carry on a conversation.
Maybe we could ask Mrs. Krebs to turn off the TV for a while.
Well, you can try, but she's pretty stubborn about it when I ask her. She won't do it for me.
Regarding a knife. Do you carry a knife? Yeah, I had a knife. I used to use carved wood.
Hello.
Did you have the knife?
My name is Mary Keller from the Ombudsman
Apparently,
Program.
I did.
Mrs.
I
Krebs,
didn't
What did you
realize
say?
it in
I
my
didn't
pocket
hear you.
Until later.
may I turn this off?
Falling out of my pocket.
Did you use the knife?
I'm Mary Keller from the Ombudsman Program. We visit nursing homes and work with residents on any problems or concerns they have.
What did you say? You'll have to speak up so I can hear you better. Problems, you say? There's one right over there. She's after me all the time to turn my TV down when I can't hardly hear it myself.
Mrs. Krebs, since both you and Mrs. Woods are here now, would you be willing to talk about the TV problem together?
Well, can't hurt much.
Mrs. Woods, I understand you find Mrs. Krebs' TV too loud. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. You heard it. Way up, all the way. And that's too loud.
What? What did she say? I didn't hear that.
Yes, it's too loud.
Your TV is quite loud, Mrs. Krebs. Did you know that it bothers Mrs. Woods?
Well, she harps at me all the time.
Why don't the two of you try to agree on some times when the TV will be on and other times when the room will be quiet? How does that sound?
Well, that would suit me, I guess. But she won't do it.
Are there some times during the day, Mrs. Woods, when the TV bothers you more than others?
All day it bothers me. But mostly in the middle of the afternoon when I'm trying to write my letters.
She says it bothers her most in the middle of the afternoon. Do you watch something special then?
Not then, but I keep it on for company. I like Donahue in the morning and Jeopardy after supper. I could turn it off in the afternoons if she wouldn't fuss at me when I have my shows on.
How does that sound, Mrs. Woods?
Well, that's a start to have peaceful afternoons.
I think we have an agreement then. Mrs. Krebs, there's a jack here for earphones. If you had earphones, you could turn up the volume without disturbing Mrs. Woods.
Earphones? Well, if you could tell my niece what it is, I don't have earphones for a TV.
I'll get in touch with your niece, Mrs. Krebs. Thank you, Mrs. Krebs. Mrs. Woods. Mrs. Krebs, can I speak with you for a minute? I couldn't help noticing that you have a hard time hearing. Do you have a hearing aid? Has your hearing been tested?
In the course of her follow-up visit with Mrs. Woods, Mary has achieved an immediate solution to the problem between the two roommates, identified the earphones as an intermediate solution, and observed the problem with Mrs. Krebs' hearing, which could also lead to a long-term solution for both residents. To be effective advocates, ombudsmen must be calm, objective, and in control, being assertive when required to diffuse a negative situation. Sometimes others may try to compromise the ombudsman's credibility with residents and staff. In this situation, Mr. Delgado, the administrator, creates a scene in the common area, at first intimidating Mary.
Mr. Delgado, do you have a few minutes? I'd like to talk with you if you have the time.
What is it this time, Mary? Do you ever come in without finding a problem?
Well, there are a few complaints about a couple of things I'd like to discuss, if you can.
I'm a busy man. You need to talk to my staff.
But I was wondering if...
Have you ever heard of the chain of command? You always insist on going right to the top of your so-called problems, don't you, Mary? I have many important things to do to keep this facility running, to keep from losing money. Do you have any idea how difficult that is? The government's making cuts, corporate saying expenses are too high. It's a struggle just to keep the doors open, let alone take time for the trivial problems you bring in here. This isn't a country club, Mary. This is a nursing facility. Advocates, ombudsman, everybody's looking over my shoulder. We're overregulated, that's what the problem is. And then you come in here and try to tell me what to do.
Rather than let Mr. Delgado make a scene in front of residents and staff, Mary could have diffused the situation by being assertive from the start.
Mr. Delgado, I'd like to talk with you.
What is it this time, Mary? Do you ever come in without finding a problem?
There are a couple of issues I'd like to discuss.
I'm a very busy man, Mary. You need to talk to my staff.
I have spoken with your staff, and now...
And now you insist on going right to the top with your trivial complaints. I don't have time for this. Advocates, ombudsman.
Mr. Delgado, let's go into your office. I can see you're very busy and have a number of business concerns. The purpose of my visit is to resolve problems cooperatively with you and your facility. To do that, I need some of your time to talk about these two complaints.
Complaints? That's the last thing I need. Why can't you just deal with my staff?
I have worked with your staff on these matters, and now you are the one who can take some action. When's a better time to meet with you?
I don't know. The auditors are coming in tomorrow. We've got a board meeting on Friday.
I'm available next week, if that's better for you. Which day is best?
I've got a staff meeting on Monday. We're interviewing nursing directors on Tuesday. Thursday's no good.
What about Wednesday morning?
All right. But look, I don't have hours to give you, Mary. First thing Wednesday morning, half an hour tops.
9 a.m. Wednesday. Thank you, Mr. Delgado. I'll see you then.
I'll see you Wednesday, Mary.